everyone. Welcome to
The Line of Thoughts.
In today's episode, we are going to talk about therapy. We definitely understand it's a controversial topic, but we're just going to go ahead and provide our personal experience.
To start off, I know that you are taking therapy, and I just want to know, what do you think about therapy? Do you think that it has helped you or it has not?
So, therapy is a very controversial conversation for the simple fact that we all have our either personal experience or thoughts about therapy. And in most cultures, therapy is just not something that you use or you hear of. Speaking in our Mexican culture or Hispanic culture, when you bring up therapy, it's like, why?
Yeah.
Like, why do you need it? Why are you taking it? It's not going to help you. It's just talking. But in reality, if you really commit to therapy, it's not just talking. And so, in my personal experience, I felt like taking therapy was more about obtaining a different mindset, different skills that I can use. Because I feel like once you reach towards therapy, it's mostly when you reach the lowest point in the sense of feeling loneliness, not knowing exactly how to handle things, and just simply not knowing how to talk to someone.
Mm.
And so, in my personal experience, I took therapy because I felt like, yes, I was at one of my lowest points, and it actually has helped me a lot. I have an amazing therapist, which is shout out to her. She actually makes me do the work. And like I said, in order for therapy to work, you have to do the inner work, like with yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And she did go ahead and tell me, we can come to therapy. I can tell you all these tools that you can use to have a different perspective and try to make changes within yourself. But at the end of the day, I can't do anything for you. I can't force you to do them. It's your decision at the end of the day, and I'm just simply giving you the tools for it. Okay. And no, I think therapy has been very helpful for me. It's given me a bit more of peace. I feel like, as before, it felt like everything was just everywhere. But no, I definitely feel like it helps. And what is your perspective on therapy?
So I personally have only gone to therapy maybe 3 times when I was younger. And it was because of losing my dad, and it was really hard. But it is scary because I'm the type of person that just feels scared to just open up to anyone, really. So that was a little scary. But it did feel great to just talk to a stranger and let all your emotions out without being judged, because obviously they don't know you. But I definitely do consider going back to it because I think it is helpful. And
yeah. No, yeah, that's a good example. And therapy could be for some people, and it could be not for everyone. I feel like when you do go to therapy, you have to be vulnerable. You have to open up. You have to really talk about what's going through your head, and who you think you are.
Yeah.
Because that will help therapists a lot to kind of guide you, give you the skills. And for example, with my therapist, I had to give her a glimpse of everything that was going on. And so she actually made me read books, listen to podcasts. And after her introducing me to all of that, I think about how it is so important to really understand yourself, um, because literally the only person that can help you is yourself. At the end of the day, like, yes, we have other people who support us and who wants the best for us, but if we don't want the best for ourselves, it's kind of like,
yeah,
it doesn't help.
yeah. I like that part that you said, because yes, therapists can be there for you, but at the end of the day, it is your decision to do with whatever with that information. And I really like that you said your therapist recommends you like podcasts and
Books.
readings. How has that helped you?
It has extremely helped me because she actually had me read a book, which taught me a lot about trauma and how our mindset works, and just how even growing up as a, ever since you really have memory, and you grow up and go through those life experiences, there's glimpse of things that happen in your childhood as you're a teenager, as an adult, that literally makes you make certain decisions in your life. And so it made me understand myself more, because I feel like we all have a traumatic event that happens to us in our childhood, or in our adulthood, or in our teenage years. So it really does help a lot to understand how your mind works, how you can actually try to better things, because that's always helpful.
Yeah. And going more on like the personal level, like how did you know like, oh, it was your breaking point, or like what made you like go to therapy or even consider it? Because I know for me, like, I have reached my lowest point, but I've always just been too scared of just going to therapy and opening up to someone. So like what kind of like made you go to therapy?
So I think that the breaking point for me was when I lost my two grandparents, when we lost our sister, when my grandma was sick and my mom was in the ICU, and all that happened within a year. And I felt like I didn't really have anyone to talk to. Obviously, we have our siblings, obviously, we have family, friends, or boyfriends, but I felt like I had nowhere to run. And it was a really hard place for me. And I think that that's when I decided to go.
Yeah. Well, I'm very proud of you that you ended up going, because it does take a lot. Like I said, I've always pushed therapy and just overall taking care of myself mentally. Like, just I pushed it away for a while. And I realized that that's very unhealthy. And there it does get to a point where you can't just leave it behind. You can't just walk away from it. Like, you just have to face it. And yes, it is really sad, because sometimes, like, yes, we have each other and we'll always be there for each other, but it isn't the same. Sometimes it gets harder to just be vulnerable with your own family. So yeah, I definitely think it's such a good comfort just having someone, like you said, your therapist, that just overall looks out for you and just like advises you. And that is something that I do want to consider doing, because I feel like I have reached a point where I can't just leave it. I can't just walk away from it and I act like it's nothing. And like you said, we lost our sister, and I think that was overall like the cherry on top. I think that's what literally broke me completely. and obviously also losing my dad, and then my mom getting sick, and then moving to college. It all happened so quick that I wasn't ready. Um, so yeah, I do feel like right now I am at my lowest point, which is very sad. But I'm tired of not taking care of myself in that way. So I definitely do want to consider therapy. I think it would be good for me. I am a little scared because, like I said, it's really hard for me to open up and share my emotions. But I think it would be good for me to do that.
And yeah, it can be scary because you're being vulnerable with someone you completely don't know, and so it can be scary. But I feel like when you reach that point where you're at your lowest and you feel like you need to speak to someone, you just let everything out. And some people call it being weak. Some people call it being strong. It's a very controversial conversation because we all just have a different thought of what therapy is. And I feel like it's harder with, being like Hispanic or Mexican or from any other culture, really, because you can't be taking therapy because if you do, you're considered weak, or you're considered like your mind is fucked up, like, screwed up. And so we're just very close minded. But I feel like, therapy does help. It just gives you a different perspective of like how you can handle things differently than how you used to. And I think that that's very healthy because it shows growth, it shows strength, it shows that you acknowledge that there is something wrong, that there is something that needs to be changed. And I feel like instead of staying quiet and bottling everything up and not expressing or not talking about it, it's better to do that. And maybe you can't do it with family sometimes because you don't want to be so vulnerable to them. But I think it is healthy to speak to someone, a professional therapist who can actually guide you to make or give you those tools to make better decisions.
Yeah, and I like that you said that it's just really hard when you live in a Mexican household, but I think especially for men it's even harder because I think that obviously for a woman it's easier to open up and be sensitive, but I do want to talk about like why do you think it's just been much more harder for men, especially, I'm not saying just Mexican, obviously other cultures too, to open up and consider therapy? Because I know we've talked about it with other people in our family, and some don't believe in it, and obviously it's fine, but like what could you say from that?
So I think that men, and this is my own personal thought, but I feel like men think that by being vulnerable, it makes them weak. It makes them seem weak. It makes them like not know what they're doing, or feeling like it's more like a female thing. And so it's a hard topic just because obviously, like you said, we've spoken to several people in our family who are males, and it just seems like they don't want to be open-minded to it, for the simple fact that and this is the thing with our Mexican culture, or maybe other cultures too, is that the machismo. So it's like, no, you're supposed to be the strong, person in the family. Like, you're supposed to be the provider. You cannot be seen weak. You cannot be. But therapy is not really about whether you're weak or not. I think it's just about getting those tools to help you make better decisions, to help you see things in a different way, because sometimes in our culture we're just stuck to the same thing. Like, we're not open-minded about anything else. And with our culture, I feel like we hear a lot about what people talk.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's healthy, because I feel like in any culture they just want you to be a certain way and not who you really are.
Yeah, and I really think that it's not about like anyone else. It's really just about you. Therapy is for you. And yes, people can like talk or maybe they might not believe it, but at the end of the day, it's something that you're doing for yourself. You're taking care of yourself. And honestly, for me, when I see a man that takes care of himself, that looks out for himself, that goes to therapy, that overall just like helps themselves mentally, I honestly find that so attractive. Like, I think that like someone that takes care of themselves and knows themselves is just so much more attractive. But I also understand where like our family members like come from, because they grew up in a different generation. And obviously they didn't grow up to like being more open-minded, and so I kind of understand that too. So it is hard to like obviously shift from that, but I like how now it's more like broad. Now everyone's more into it. Like, it's not more for like female, it's not more for male. I just like how it's more normalized now than before.
So yeah, no, therapy, I think it's very important, and just taking care of your mental health, really, it's very important.
Yeah, and also I wanted to touch on, because I know we talked about like a little bit about grief and like our personal experiences, but I also did want to touch on like other like mental health issues that have also like led me to just want to even consider it, because I don't know about you, but for me, like, anxiety has always just been something that I've struggled since I can remember, and it has obviously gotten worse, and it is something really hard to deal with, because it's like it's this constant fear that just follows you around all the time. And I just wanted to ask you, like, have you ever like experienced, like, I know you talked about grief, but has there ever been like other like things that you've experienced, like for example anxiety, or like any other?
I feel like I've had anxiety, not as like on a daily basis kind of thing, just sparks here and there. And as far as depression, I don't feel like I've necessarily been exactly there, but I think for me it's just mostly like stress levels, which is why I sought therapy, was for the stress levels that I had, with just everything going on, and sometimes feeling like I'm that emotional support for everybody, instead of feeling that emotional support towards me.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why I went to therapy. And like I said, kudos to my therapist. She's amazing, hands down, because she actually makes me do the work, to really understand myself.
Yeah, that's really nice. Yes, I definitely want to come and check back like in like a month or two and explain like my own experience, because like I said, I do want to get into it. Also, I feel like in the past I never really considered it. One, because I was scared, but two is because I felt like I relied a lot on Ash, our sister. And she was kind of my emotional support. And I think it was hard for me to accept that she was just no longer here, because she was that person for me that I went for everything, every problem, literally. I felt like I had such a good support system, and it was just her. But I don't know, her words were just so comforting. So yeah, and losing that, obviously, I do feel alone. I do feel like, obviously, I do have you guys, but it's obviously not the same.
She just gave a different type of support.
Yeah,
and it's hard to explain, because I totally understand it, because she was my support system as well. Like, ever since I was young, we would party together. I saw her daughter being born. There were so many things that we went through together, and so it was just like a different type of connection, where she just understood you completely without judging you.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what decision you did, whether it was right or wrong, she made you feel at ease, like at peace.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it was just a different type of support from her. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think anyone really understands when you lose that support system, when you lose your sister, when you lose someone in any type of aspect. Like, you go through that grief because you no longer have that person. And so it is a really hard, like, losing that, it's really hard. And yeah, I felt her support even with like our family situations. Like, I felt like she was always on top of everything. Yeah. And she was literally our glue. And so now that she's not here, it's hard, because we've kind of just tried to be connected, but it's not as much as we were before.
Yeah.
And no, I think that, you seeking therapy for that specific reason, feeling like you don't have a proper like support system, even though, I give you advice, we talk, we communicate, we get along, but I think it's just sometimes you need to be vulnerable with someone, a professional you don't know.
Yeah. And honestly, I do not know why it scares me so much. Like I said, I've always just put everything in the back, and obviously now it's reached a point where I think everything is just coming, and it's all just like, I don't know, hitting me right now. But yeah, it's very difficult, because like I said, I mean, I have tried talking to like my mom about it, but it's not the same, or anyone, because she was that one person that just was so comforting to me, and I do feel sometimes alone, like I don't have anyone to talk to. And especially in moments like this, where I feel like I've reached my breaking point, it does hurt. And it's those times where I feel like I miss her even more, because she was there always, and her words just had some sort of comfort that I can't even explain to you. But yeah, I think it's time for me to take care of myself mentally, because I don't think I could just bottle it up anymore, because it's not healthy, and two, I don't want to be living like this anymore. I think I've reached a point where I'm like, I'm done. I'm done not taking care of myself. I'm ready to seek for help, and obviously it's one step at a time. But yeah.
And like we said, therapy is a very controversial conversation to have, just because not everyone thinks the same way, and it's okay to not think the same way. But I think it's very beneficial to have those resources available.
Yeah, and it's more for if you ever feel like, oh, judged, or it's something you're thinking about, um, it's for you. At the end of the day, it's for you. And think about yourself. There's so much that a person can take. Um, like I said, I don't recommend you guys just bottling it up and not helping yourself out, because it does get to a point where you just can't take it anymore. And why not save yourself from getting there to actually just taking care of yourself, whether it's therapy, whether it's other things like exercising, like doing other things to just overall like de-stress yourself, because everything can literally like stress you out, or whether it's school, work, family, any problems you're dealing with. I myself recommend therapy as well. um, and you guys are not alone. We're all here for you. And yeah.
Well, thank you guys for listening to our topic today, and we will be bringing out more soon. So stay